Good morning from Buffalo, New York, uh, or good afternoon or good evening wherever you are when you watch this. It's been a while since I've been on camera, so I feel rusty and a little nervous even. It is actually weird to make videos for other people to watch because you're talking to yourself. Well, I mean, Shay the cat is here. Come on, buddy. But really I'm in a room talking to myself and trying to look at this little camera on my phone to pretend right here to pretend it's people or a person, and that's just weird, and we have become a culture that has gotten used to that, and we've gotten used to people walking around seemingly talking to themselves because they're talking on the phone. I mean, at first, with earbuds and stuff, when you would see a person walking around talking to themselves on their phone, but talking on the phone out loud, walking around, you're like, this is nutty. And now we're just used to it. I guess that's how technology it goes. I don't know if you can see from the distance of the camera to my hand, but I've already got the coffee shakes. So my left hand is shaking slightly. That doesn't mean I'm going to stop. Oh, you've probably seen this before. This mug is from my brother. When this cup is empty, it will be time to. Yes. Pardon me. So yeah, I feel rusty. Um, it's a beautiful day here in Buffalo. It's just over 60 degrees. It's going to get up to 63 or 64, I think, this afternoon. So for mid-October, that's pretty nice and warm. I'm going to take advantage and do a bike ride after I finish this video. And I'll get as many bike rides in as I can before it's too cold to do them. Although I was pretty hardcore last fall, and even the end of winter. I found out that I could bike down to about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. I'd have to really bundle up, and by the end of the bike ride, my feet would be cold, even if I had on multiple layers of socks. I could tolerate about 40. That's pretty cold, though, depending on the wind, too. 45 is better, 50 is much better, and then obviously in the 60s is great. And I biked a lot this summer, and I'm back to swimming again now more regularly. There's more hours at the university pool than there were in the summer when the students aren't around. So I think they cut back the hours when the students aren't around, even though the general public can pay for memberships to the pool too. Oh, sorry. I seem to have spilled just a smidge of coffee. Let's see. I just put out peanuts, shelled and unshelled, plus birdseed for my local critters. I get tons of sparrows and squirrels at my feeder on the second floor. They come up the catalpa tree in front of my house, which is kind of a perfect maybe 4 or 5 feet from the front porch, so the squirrels can jump from the closest branch to my porch. And I have befriended many of them over the many years, especially since COVID, as those of you who watch previous videos know. And I got a regular crop, and they're really used to me. It's a mix of gray squirrels and black squirrels, those Canadian style squirrels. And they're really comfortable with me. I can be right out there, and they'll come they'll come right up to where my feet are if I put peanuts at my feet, and they'll grab them, and they'll even eat them just sitting on my feet. So that's pretty cool. Uh, I I'm sure you've heard this from other psychic folk before, that certainly you can be more in tune and in touch with nature should you choose. Uh, I love to talk to the squirrels and the birds, and they say that you can talk to trees too. So sometimes I say thank you, catalpa tree, for taking care of everybody and shading the house and stuff. And I really believe that animals can feel, if not meaning from the words, definitely intent. So, excuse me, I think it matters, and if you want to, now obviously if you live somewhere like my friend Diane, where there might be bears in the woods, then you got to be a little more careful about attracting bears. Don't try to make friends with a bear. Obviously, observe your local safety precautions depending on where you live. But yeah, but if you want to talk more to nature and certainly to your pets, I've noticed with friends on occasion, like when their animals maybe seem sort of I don't know if aloof is the right word, but maybe not as dialed in like when you're around. If you start talking to them really directly, they'll respond, and sometimes it's funny because you can get a response that the owner has not seen before by being more direct with their animals maybe than they are. Certainly with Shay, I mean, he's pretty trustworthy with me. Let's see if we can get him on camera. Just the top of his head. There we go. Say hi, buddy. He's looking at the camera. That's funny. I think he's looking at the swing. So, yeah, and actually, speaking of nature, I went on a bike ride a week or two ago. I biked out to the Outer Harbor. To say Outer Harbor here in Buffalo, what that means is, well, the city of Buffalo is on the easternmost tip of Lake Erie, and we're very close to Lake Ontario, which is in bordering Canada here, and so when the winds come across the lake, that's how you get that lake effect snow in winter, because it picks up moisture from the lake and it drops it right on the city in the form of snow. And when you go to our outer harbor, literally we're sitting on the lake. There's kind of an inlet that they created called the Buffalo River. So the Buffalo River is like sort of the inlet. So when I bike out there, I'm literally biking alongside the river, and then beyond the break wall, the lake proper. So it's beautiful. I mean, a lake is huge, and I've been to both coasts of the United States. I was at Martha's Vineyard a few times, and I've been in California all the way to the Pacific coast. And from the perspective of a resident, a lake looks just like an ocean, really. I mean, they're just as vast. You see just as far across one of the Great Lakes as you do across the ocean. They feel the same, except generally I think lake water is warmer for swimming, at least in the Northeast, because a lake is more, I'm not really sure why. That's a good question. Like when I swam, it was cold when I swam in the Atlantic in summer in Martha's Vineyard, and it was kind of cold. It was too cold. Did I swim in the Pacific? Of course, I swam in Key West too, in Florida many years ago, but that was warm, and that was December. But obviously, way out on the Keys, that's about as warm as it gets in the United States in the winter, and it's about 10 degrees hotter, I think, on average than even the rest of Florida. I don't know what the point of all that was. Oh, I was trying to just tell you what the lakefront here is like. But anyway, you can swim at the beaches that are south of Buffalo, and even north of Buffalo up into Niagara Falls in the summer, and they're warm. It's nice. It's different than ocean temperatures, I think, generally. But I'm not a meteorologist. I'm not a weather expert. But anyway, when I was biking to the Outer Harbor last week, I noticed, or 2 weeks ago, a ton of caterpillars, a ton of these red and black caterpillars. They were usually multicolored. Like the heads would be black, the middle would be kind of like rust red, and then the back would be black. And I saw 5 of them crossing the bike path. 4 of them were alive. One must have got nicked by somebody walking by or biking by. And they were making their way. And then my mom looked them up later, and I guess those are more like moth, some kind of moth they become, not exactly butterflies. But again, I'm not expert on that. And I actually saw, for the first time all summer, I saw 3 short, well, one was a little longer, garter snakes cross the path. And they were about this thick. They were not thick. That's wild because I hardly ever see snakes here. So I don't know what it was about that particular day, but there was no other day all through summer that I saw caterpillars or snakes crossing the bike path, the bike path is miles long at the Outer Harbor, which is why I like it so much. But that particular day there were a lot, so it was kind of interesting. Which reminds me of another kind of cool thing that happened. Yeah, I'm rambling. I'm a rambling man. I mean, I got the coffee now. I'm rambling. I promise I'll get to the dream that'll probably be in the title of this video momentarily, but once you start me up, I never stop. Why does that sound familiar? Oh, somebody's starting a bicycle. Anyway, just a second. Thanks for watching. I had a cool moment a couple weeks ago on my porch, on another warm day. Well, 2 different things. There was one day that I was out there and I called across the street to a squirrel that I saw in the driveway of my across the street neighbor. And the squirrel stood straight up and with the little paws tucked. And I was like, "Oh, thank you for seeing me." And I was like, "Come on over." And I was like, "Okay, I'll come over." And it came right up the tree and got food. So that's cool. They obviously know who I am. Word is out. And there was a day that I was sitting out there and there was a bee on the porch flopping around. It was struggling. And I couldn't figure out at first what was going on. I was looking at it. I thought maybe it had a damaged wing or something because it kept flopping and flopping and flopping and it couldn't fly. And I thought, geez, this is kind of awful to watch. Should I kill this bee to spare this bee? And then I got down and I looked more closely at it and I could actually see that it had a little something was stuck to its hind leg, one of its hind legs. It was like maybe a piece of plastic, not long at all, but just enough to like make it impossible for this thing to take off. And it was struggling to try to get it off, and it couldn't get it off. So I thought, well, I don't know if I can get this off, but I'm gonna try now that at least I can see what the problem is. So I had a couple of pairs of pliers out because I had been changing the strings on one of my guitars. I had a needle nose plier and regular pliers. And I thought maybe I could softly get this thing in the needle nose plier and then maybe use the other plier. And I also had wire cutters to kind of like, kind of grip the little plastic off the leg and get it off. And so I brought the two out there. I brought the needle nose and the wire clippers. And the funniest thing was when I went down to like try to kind of see if I could get the bee in the needle nose pliers, it actually sort of crawled onto the needle nose pliers. So then I was able to actually sit back in the chair, hold the needle nose pliers up, and like literally the bee was turned away from me so I could perfectly see the little piece of plastic on the back of its hind leg. And I took the wire clippers in my other hand and I just scraped them right along the leg and I got the thing off, and boom, the bee took straight up off into the sky, like picturesque, over the tree into the blue sky, like a victory. And I thought, oh my God, that's awesome. Saved one bee. And then within a couple minutes later, okay, I should preface this by saying that my neighbor Chuck, I don't know if it was one of his bees or not. It could have been, but he's a beekeeper. So he's got beehives in his backyard. They're actually on the top of one level of a little carriage house that he has in the back. of his property. The carriage house is old, so he can't use it for tenancy. But at one time, it had an apartment upstairs. And so he has multiple beehives that he sets out on top of it on the second floor, so I can see them over my fence when I am standing in my own backyard. And his collection of hives has only grown, and he makes his own honey every summer and into fall, and the honey is delicious. I've bought much of it from him, and obviously it's literally local honey, and the honey changes color and flavor over the course of the season depending on what the bees are bringing back to the hive. So this could have been one of his bees, but literally a couple minutes after I saved the bee, I was still sitting there in the chair, just lying back. I think I was having coffee, and into my lap drops this little white worm, like about, almost an inch long. And at first I thought, could this be one of the catalpa tree worms? But then I had the notion to look up, and I saw a bee above me, right near the tip of my roof, like at the top of the second floor. So I think that the bee came back and gifted me this little worm, and then I looked it up, the description for like northeast worms or whatever, and what it was is what they call a wax worm, which is a worm that is in the hives. I actually don't think they're helpful. I think they're that they eat the wax, and they're not helpful to hives. But it fit the description of a worm that's found in beehives. So I think in my mystical, magical, possibly deranged mind, I figured that the thankful bee came back and gifted me this little worm from the hive, because, like I said, when it fell into my lap and I looked up, the bee was like, there was a bee right above me, just one. Maybe not, but it felt pretty cool. It felt that way, right? So, I mean, I didn't really need that gift, per se. There wasn't much to do with that worm, so I returned that worm to nature. I think I just, what did I do? I think I just flicked it over the railing of the porch. But it was pretty cool nonetheless. So, actually, without meaning to, that little setup ties into the dream I had last night, or sets up the dream I had last night a little bit. And this was a doozy. This was back in the cosmic category that I often find myself in. And my friend Kim Carey, the psychic, her channel is Intuitive You. If you're not familiar, you probably are. I've asked her a few times about dreaming and dreams. Not super in depth, but one of the things that she has told me in readings and like in public live on her channel, because she'll take questions from channel members on some of her lives, some of her live YouTube videos. She said a couple different things, about my dreaming in particular. One, she said that when I'm dreaming, sometimes I'm skipping dimensions, which could mean that I'm like kind of leaping into other dimensions, or I'm jumping over dimensions into further dimensions. But there's a dimensional aspect to my dreaming that I go to, let's say, other places. And this feels intuitively correct to me. And then more recently, when I asked her about my brother Justin is on the other side, and this is detailed in my 2 books. He was my mother's second-born child. He died just after childbirth. And he has been around us for years, more recently, but my other brother, Steve, used to interact with him for years, because Steve was pretty heavily psychic and could talk to him, could see him and talk to him for years, and there were other signs that he was around us and like helping the family. So I asked him one time, "Hey, what's Justin been up to lately? Like, does he come in and check in on our family, meaning my brother Steve and my mom and myself and maybe my dad to some degree too, though my parents haven't been together for a long time." And what Kim said was that, and I asked, "Is Justin near or far? And is that even a relevant question to ask?" Because I wonder about in spirit what, you know, do, because it's said like in, at least in in quantum physics, you can travel instantaneously. Atoms can travel instantaneously from one spot to another spot anywhere in the universe when they're entangled with other related particles. It's kind of a complicated concept that I partly understand, but there seems to be faster than light travel that is apparently possible in quantum physics allows for it. Okay, so I wondered if it kind of worked the same way in spirit. Like, let's say my brother Justin is way out somewhere in some distant place, distant dimension. Does he have to travel? Does it take him time to get back to visit to us? So I didn't exactly ask the question that way, but I got kind of a partial answer. What Kim said was that, well, first she said when he came in and she could see him, his first greeting to me was, "Brother, hey, brother." And he was animated and friendly and like funny and light. And it sounded to me like I would imagine he would be, and the way he would fit in our family, that he would be one of us. And so like she immediately kind of brightened at his presence, which I thought was really cool. And he said, among other things, that he comes in to see how we're doing. He checks on us, see how things are going, and then he goes back out. So when she described this, I was thinking that he's off adventuring in lots of other places, and then he comes back and sees how we're doing, which implies distance and time. So, not that we understand how that would work on the other side, but that's, it kind of answered my question. It seems like it's not maybe like instantly that he comes back. Like maybe maybe there's a little interdimensional travel time. Okay. I'm not an expert, but maybe I'll know more someday. I may ask him follow-up questions along those lines at some point. And she said she described him as kind of like an adventurous spirit. And now imagine too that maybe in spirit, if spirit is trying to help humans, but also trying to help other beings in other places, that you could kind of have interdimensional missions in different places. You could go to other places, try to see what positive influence you could exert as spirit on the development of maybe other cultures on other planets. I mean, that sounds pretty cool, right? And another thing that she said, that he said, that one of the reasons that he likes being in spirit and didn't choose to stay when he was born on Earth this time is because there are no limitations in spirit. And that really stood out to me. No limitations. And I noted in the chat, the live stream chat that other people were watching too, that made a lot of sense to me, because Justin was born 3 months premature, and he would have had pretty severe disabilities, if he had lived, and he didn't. It was only a couple hours. And of course too, if he had survived, my mom probably wouldn't have had my brother Steve a few years later. Steve was also very premature, so he does have disabilities. He was born with cerebral palsy, so he has physical limitations. He doesn't walk, but his upper body is more is stronger, more like mine, more fully formed, I guess you could say, from more the time in the womb. And he has a slight learning disability, but he's like super sharp, super funny. We're so on the same page, emotionally and spiritually, and my mom too, and I think Justin too. And I think so. Justin decided to pass on incarnation this time around, and so then Steve had the opportunity to incarnate, even though his existence has been very challenging. We've all had challenges. Everyone has challenges, but I think his existence has been particularly challenging. Yeah, and along the same lines, I think Kim answered a follow-up question maybe from someone else, or somehow it came up that this is also explains why sometimes, like, she was describing an instance where twins were born to someone else, and when the twins were being born, the one twin's health was failing and it wasn't going to make it through childbirth. So the other twin, which was connected to it spiritually, emotionally, also decided to decline incarnating because it didn't want to be without its twin in that incarnation. So in that instance, both the twins died. I don't know if it was during birth or pre-birth, but this kind of, even though it's obviously a tragedy for the parents involved, it kind of sort of puts in some context into why sometimes people might choose not to, how their life path could actually deviate from the plan, or where free will is involved in incarnation, And so when I told this to my mom, because losing Justin was devastating to her, and I detailed this in the books, and she didn't have a lot of support from her family. Her family really didn't come through on that emotionally. I guess they just didn't maybe know how, but she felt very, very alone, very, very alone. And obviously it's been 50 years, so the pain is not the same, but it's still there. And telling her, about the story about these twins choosing not to incarnate when one was failing and the other didn't want to be by itself, here, that made sense to her. And so, yeah, maybe that was a little comforting in some way. Put things in context. So anyway, I've deviated further from telling you the dream. I'm telling you everything but the dream, but it all sets it up, I think. I'm going to sneeze. Oh, sorry, hold on a second. Sorry. I'm not going to edit that out because then it'll take more time to upload this. That's how we roll here. That's why I don't have that many subscribers, I think. It's the raw, unfiltered me. Take it or leave it, and you're certainly welcome to leave it. But she also said, Carrie said, that Justin... Oh, did anybody hear Shay sigh? Oh, are you comfy? He's very comfy. Let's see if we can see. I don't know if that's on camera. Can people see that you're... Oh, he's looking at it again. Can people see that you're against the little green Afghan? Okay. If I change the height, it's going to screw everything up. So I'm going to leave it. Sorry. Kim said that Justin is often with me in my dreams, especially my cosmic dreams, my visits to other dimensions. And she said that even if I don't know that it's him with me in my dreams, he often helps to take me to these remote places, these far off, dimensions, when I'm skipping dimensions in dreams. And then I can even ask him if I want to see certain places, that he can take me there, because I swear that I have seen bits of the Akashic records, what they call the Akashic records. I know I've been exposed to that. I've seen a lot of somewhat mystical symbols over the last bunch of years from different belief systems indicating the end of a major era. This is all in my previous videos. I can't get into it all now. And in my books too, which if you want to go on a space ride, the space ride of my mind and spirit, then that's where my books go. I guess they're unconventional that way. And so she said that Justin often accompanies me in dreams, even if I'm not aware of his presence, which was interesting because I have not really been aware of his presence. And I don't still know if I've actually seen him in a dream. And of course, after she told me that, I really wanted to see him in a dream, but my success at steering dreams has been exactly zero. Every time I try to get a dream, every time I put an intention into the air, it gets reversed on me and I have a negative dream because I think that the tricksters like to F around with me that way. Because Kim says that when we're in spirit, especially if we're trying to, do good, be a light worker, whatever term you want to use, we're brighter. We shine in the darkness, and so we attract all the flies too. So it would make sense that Justin is there in some of my cosmic dreams. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if he had something to do with the dream I had last night or was involved in some way. Okay, finally, let's talk about the dream. If you're still with me, and if you are, thank God for you. I mean, you're a trooper. Sometimes too, when I talk about these cosmic dreams that seem to be long, I can remember more as I start talking about it too. So forgive me if it's not a linear path. All right, how do we start here? So, the basic premise of the dream was that I was watching a movie. This is so often the case about a guy on a quest to understand like all of creation, how all of creation works. So I guess in a way, a person not entirely unlike myself, but it didn't seem to literally be me. But then, of course, there were parts of the dream in which it was like the fourth wall was broken, and instead of watching this like a movie, then I was in the dream as him. It went back and forth between watching it and being in it, being both the participant and the observer. And he had, well, this is funny because this reminds me of another dream from a couple nights ago. Oh, more tangents. He had a shaved head. And that reminds me that a few nights earlier, I had a dream that I was like a Buddhist monk and then I could surf on water, like in my bare feet. And there were a lot of Asian children in this dream dressed in like Buddhist robes. I saw them in one scene, and then in another scene, that's when I was surfing the water. And it was awesome. I could glide on water. So, but this guy wasn't dressed in any Buddhist robes. He was really, I think he was just dressed normally, really. Dark clothes. Like I said, shaved head. And he was on this sort of solo quest for knowledge. And he symbolically in the dream realized that he was passing through, I guess you could say, stages of greater enlightenment. Like he was kind of going up a ladder of enlightenment gradually. And the way this was represented in the dream was that, this is so hard to describe, because there's an aspect of numerology involved. It was like, traveling in, kind of like traveling in space, floating in space and moving forward in space. And then he could see that, like maybe it was that he had kind of achieved like the next 7 or 8 tasks towards the next step of enlightenment. And when he achieved these 7 or 8 tasks, it was like I could see the number sort of like in front of him and almost like on a dial. And or almost like a badge too, like you've been awarded, you've reached this level of enlightenment, you've been awarded this next like certificate, the circular certificate of merit. And then when it was awarded, as it floated there in space to him, he was able to pass through, up to the next level of enlightenment. And it was like it was almost like seeing his progression told in a movie in rapid time, because he was passing through each of these like sort of levels one after the other, and getting closer and closer to I guess maybe source itself, because I would see like, okay, the 8, and then I saw like maybe a 7 and a 6, like more tasks, another degree of enlightenment, another degree of enlightenment. And it was like he was out in space. And it also seemed like the further up that ladder he got, the more remote it became, which feels a little counterintuitive. Like how do I put this? I don't want to say it was lonely, like a lonely quest, because he didn't seem lonely, but maybe that was my perception of it. Like this is cool, but in a way, his experience is becoming more and more narrow. There are fewer and fewer who have gotten here, and so he's in a more remote place. But that was not necessarily bad. It's hard to describe. So I think about this for a second. So along the way, I think the levels were represented by elevators in an old hotel. And this is a thing that I get in my dreams all the time. I feel like maybe a lot of people have this in their dreams. You can tell me if you do in the comments, please. I'm always in these old elevators, old hotels. Like they look like 100 years old. Like there's, brass and like brass interior, and the elevator itself is ornate. And they're usually the shapes and the sizes of the elevators themselves vary greatly. Sometimes they're so small that they're for one person and you can barely fit in it. And other times they look like cargo elevators, where they're like huge and almost empty, and maybe just a couple people are in them. So I don't know if this was also representing like progressing up through levels of enlightenment too. But I remember one scene where now, instead of watching this on the movie screen, I was him. I was standing in his shoes, and multiple elevator doors opened in front of me at the same time, but they were at slightly different distances. So this is in a kind of obviously fluid space. It's not entirely a literal space that could really exist the way we would think of a hotel lobby. All right, one second. So at this one part in the dream, when the 4 elevator doors open, 3 of them, well, a couple of them look almost like salons or bedrooms inside. And in 3 out of the 4, or maybe 2 out of the 4, there were, this is getting me in trouble, there were attractive prostitutes, like temptations, distractions from his path, I believe. And I resisted going into those elevators as him. But then I thought, oh, I'll just pop into one quickly and I'll pop right back out again if I don't like it. And when I popped in, these 2 attractive women were like on me, like not literally on me, but like on me energetically, like immediately. And they just wanted just cash, just cash grubbing. And I just got the hell out of it. I just got right out there immediately. I was like, no, thank you. And I went up in a different elevator. And there were other elevators too, because it kind of seemed to, the movie, the story seemed to drift between like floating through space through these different levels and seeing the representations of his merit badges on his way to enlightenment mixed with mixed with elevator scenes. It was mixed together. And there was another elevator scene where like two people were fighting each other, trying to get to this place of enlightenment. And it seemed like they were going to interact with him and give him a hard time too. But they didn't. Instead, they kind of savaged each other. And that part was a little, a little more dark. And who knows, that could be an influence from tricksters or other, not entirely benevolent spirits trying to mess with my dreams a little bit, because they often do that. They often try to have their say. They try to make a cameo in my good dreams. But these two people who presumably were trying to get to the same place that the guy was, there was no way they were going to get there, because all they were doing was savaging each other, which of course is symbolic. And they were really literally savaging each other. They kind of bludgeoned each other, like basically to dust. Like as they were attacking each other, they basically sort of disintegrated. It was unusual. And that elevator seemed like it had a mirrored wall, because I could see myself as him, and it didn't look like me at all. And I was wearing a dark, maybe red shirt or dark shirt, but I realized I had on several layers of shirts. And when the two people were fighting, it's like one of them asked me, like, how did you get this far without getting injured or something like that, or getting attacked or savaged too, like they were savaging each other. And I realized that as him, I was wounded. I had wounds in my chest. And I said, well, I think the way that I've been dealing with it is just to put more layers on, to absorb more blood, to keep somehow my essence in. So it was weird. It was like I was wearing like 6 shirts. They were layered. It was almost like layers of protection to get me through, but it was working, because even though I had wounds, I was able to make it through this journey as this guy, to continue towards his enlightenment. That's what he seemed to be seeking. So I got past that, and then there was maybe like a courtyard, and there was one more interaction with a prostitute who approached me and was totally charming, and so charming that I was under the impression that she actually liked me. And I think I said something like, well, would you be interested in me, like, if I didn't, have money, or you didn't want money from me? And then she like completely like laughed in my face, and she's like, are you, like, basically, are you kidding? Like, look at you. I wouldn't be interested in you in a million years if I didn't want something from you. Which was helpful, then hurtful at the same time, because it sort of broke the spell of her charm. So I was like, okay, well, catch you later. And then I was clear of that part. And then it was back to like I was watching it as a movie. And what was interesting was, and this has happened in many dreams before, instead of being on screen now, the action of the movie was moved into the theater itself. So I'm sitting in a seat in the theater, but now it's like the first 5 rows are all gone, and the action of the dream is more integrated into the theater itself. And so I see this circular space in the front of the theater with the guy who's been on this journey. And he has finally graduated to what seems to be the last stage of his enlightenment. He has made it through all of the challenges, and he has reached a sort of point of merging with a greater consciousness. And the way this was represented was that he steps into what seems to be like an empty spaceship. And then I was kind of in his, in him. Then I was him again momentarily, because I saw the spaceship sort of take off. And there was something like, it was almost like somebody said something, or I heard something like, oh, he's going to meet up with the aliens now. And when he arrived in the spaceship to this final space, as I was sitting inside the theater, he rose up through the floor in the center of this like podium, and he rose up, and he kind of, I think he even had robes on. I don't know if he had his hands in the air, but he kind of rose up, and he was facing the movie screen. So his face was turned away from me, so I couldn't see his face, but he sort of rose up and sort of like, he was saying like, I'm here, I made it to this space. And around him, in the circle of space around him, were these short figures that looked like small humans, like, but almost like the size of like, like dolls, like action figures, toys. And I would say in this circle, as he stood, I'd say, I don't know, there were like maybe 200 of them, 250 of them. I remember thinking that in the dream. And I don't know if they were alien beings or what they were, but they were, or essences maybe, because they were kind of like, it's hard to make out the limbs, but you knew they were you knew that they were energies, that they were figures around him. And then some new imagery kind of started to enter the dream. And it was like having reached full enlightenment, having merged with some greater consciousness. I don't know if it was God or not, but because of that mention of the aliens, but having at least achieved some new level of being. It was like he had reached the end of a cycle, and it was implied the cycle had to start over again then. And the way this was represented was, I started to get visions of him surrounded by like bacterial life, like just like tiny single-celled organisms, and like very basic forms of life, matter. And in a very quick period of time, it was like the bacterial matter, the microscopic matter, was growing and multiplying in quickly in front of our eyes, and evolving into more complex beings. And even like the slightly more complex beings were consuming the less complex beings, and thereby growing. So it was like the whole ground, this whole earth patch was alive, and it was like watching an entire field come to life, from microbes to like insects to larger insects to small animals to like, and watching all these quick stages of evolution of life on a planet in seconds. and minutes, super fast. And the microbial life, like as I said, it was as it grew in complexity, the larger beings consumed the smaller beings and thereby grew and grew and grew and grew, which is kind of how it works. I mean, you have a food chain on planet Earth. The bigger, I mean, we like it or not, in nature, the bigger animals eat the smaller animals, and the smaller animals eat the smaller animals that are smaller than them. And, whales eat smaller fish, and, well, sharks eat people sometimes. Well, sorry, I scared Shay. But like there is a food chain, and that's what this was. It was like watching the food chain evolve in rapid progression, and it was like from zero. So having attained enlightenment, this guy either became part of the process or helped to restart the process or started a new process somewhere, and that the result was brand new life from nothing, a reboot, if you will. And what was interesting about it was then I wasn't sure where the guy was anymore. Like once I saw the microbial life, I don't know if he kind of merged with it, but I do remember that as he was still standing in the circle on the podium in the movie theater in the round with the 200-ish figures around him, the small doll-sized figurines, they started to wander. They started to drift into the audience where we were. There had been kind of a separation between audience and performers, if you will, up until that point. But then they started to wander into the audience. And as they did, as they came up over the chairs, or really over the little kind of hills that were there, because this was already transforming, they were bringing with them this microbial life. Excuse me. This bacteria and these organisms and then the insects. And so it was like seemingly we were going to become part of it too because we were there. And then when the dream ended, that's kind of where the story went, because I remember then I was with others, one or two others. There were like maybe three of us in total, and it was like we had maybe been transported to this new place, this new planet that was evolving life from nothing. And we actually entered the space from these doors, but the door, I don't know where the doors, I don't know where we were, I guess maybe we were leaving the theater and entering into this field, but we opened the door, and I think there were two or three doors altogether, and we each stood outside, like standing in the doorway with the doors cracked open and this field of life coming alive. And all these colorful bugs, microbes, insects started to kind of like crawl up us. And we realized that we were going to be consumed and become a part of the new life of this place, whether it was a planet or just a space. We maybe it was, maybe at that point then I was with other people who had gotten here, and it was like, kind of like if you think of like, I mean, it's morbid, but if you think of a dead body in the ground, when it decomposes, it becomes part of new life. Like I like that thought. I mean, I kind of maybe before I die, I'll have to try to figure it out. Like I've read about like human composting, where like they'll put you in a pod so that you can become compost and like contribute to new life. Instead of, I mean, if you could get certainly you could get cremated, but when you get cremated, most of what is you goes up the smokestack. I've read about it. About 95% of you goes up the smokestack, in water and other things, and the ashes are about 5% of what you were. So you're not fertilizing anything at that point. You're just burning it up. I'm talking about literally fertilizing new life with your no longer life-filled body, just your vessel. And that's what this was like. We were standing there in the doorways. We had entered the new space, like in that Star Trek movie when when Spock dies, I think in the second movie, and then they have what's called the Genesis device, which causes life to evolve on new planets. And because they shot his space pod with his body onto the planet that was evolving new life, he was reborn on the planet. That's how they justified his coming back to the series. So we were standing in the doorway, and the microbial and colorful creatures were crawling up us, and I had the sense that we were going to become, we were going to cease to exist as we were, and we were going to become part of the source material for the new life there, and that was okay. It wasn't troubling. It was just what was. We were not alarmed. We looked at each other, I think, with smiles, and that's when the dream ended. And I'm at 56 minutes and 6 seconds. Whew. It's a lot of talking. I wonder if Justin was one of the people there with me. I couldn't tell who they were. It seemed like there could have been one female presence. Maybe one female presence, one male presence, and myself, but I wasn't sure. And like I said, the original guy, the shaved head guy who was the traveler seeking enlightenment, where he was no longer known. Maybe he had been the first to be sort of consumed in the ritual to create the new life, maybe with the help of these tiny alien beings. Maybe, not sure. But the imagery was strong. I hope I was able to communicate some of it properly. The words are very hard to come by when these things seem to happen in sort of like these spaces that are nebulous. They don't seem to be grounded in the same way as like we feel like we're grounded on Earth. They could be anywhere. And they don't, like when he was floating in space and going through the sort of like these stages of enlightenment before the elevators appeared. I mean, this was a space that you could say it was an infinite space, or I don't know. Now I'm rambling. I won't speculate further. But you really couldn't make out like how big is this space that we're in. There's no way to tell. It was weird. It's just like it was kind of everywhere and nowhere, which is very contradictory and something I would say, and probably not helpful. But anyway, I've said it, so too late. So I'll leave it there because further speculation will start to take this thing backwards. So if you made it all the way through, thank you for watching. Holy smoly. If, like some of my viewers, this helped you to get to sleep with my calming delivery, awesome. That's fine. These videos are meant to be whatever is useful to whoever watches them. That's it. So I'm going to go. I should do another book reading from my book soon. I've got a friend who's helping me revamp my website, so we got to reconnect how you can get the book if you want to get it. You can always order a softcover copy through me through the website. I think that's set up now. And you can also order them through Amazon. I have two books. The first is called God Laughs at Dirty Jokes. That's 10 years old. My new one is called Life is Magic. They're both on regular Amazon as paperbacks and as Kindles. Okay? So thanks for watching. Your feedback is most welcome. That's everything. See you soon for a book reading. Be well. Take care. I think we're on the right track here with the election. The energy feels correct to me for good things to happen. So when I talk about manifestation, I encourage you to focus on that. I never focus on the other guy winning. I don't actually even entertain it as a thought. I have already convinced myself that Vice President Harris will be president. And the more that I sort of live in that space in my head, the better it is. So you might find that helpful too. All right. Take care. Be well. Comments welcome. Like, share, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Take care. Bye, 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 bye.